Okay, this is the time and space understanding BCE, CE, BC, and AD timeline. So just as a review from yesterday, BCE, before Common Era, is the same thing as before Christ. And Common Era, which is the era we currently live in, is the same as Anno Domini. So for this activity, you're going to need 8 different colors. So I suggest you use 8 colored pencils. I don't have colored pencils at home, so I'm using these 8 colored pens. The reason you need 8 different colors is because you are going to map 8 different ancient civilizations on this timeline. We call this type of timeline a multiple tier or multi-tier timeline. And that's because it has more than one tier. So you have a tier for Mesopotamia, a tier for Age of Exploration, one for Greece, and so on. So for each civilization, you're going to want to mark it or plan ahead to mark it with a specific color. So for example, I could choose this red color for Mesopotamia, brown for Age of Exploration, and green for Greece. And I sort of just make my key early on, so I'm aware of what I'm doing. And I'll go ahead and just show you those 4. So each civilization has a date where the civilization began and when it ended. And in civilizations, we call that the rise. So the rise of a civilization, so when they came into power and began to sort of dominate and really develop as a society. And then when it ended, we call that the fall. Okay, so down here in these questions, it's going to ask you about the rise and fall of the civilization. And really what it's just referring to is the information you've been given here, which is when it began and when it ended. Okay, so that's given to you for every civilization. So you're going to need that later on. So the first thing you do is it says to map out the various civilizations on the timeline below by shading in one row for each civilization. So if I start with Mesopotamia, I had my red. I'm going to find the starting date on the timeline, which was 3000 BCE. I come here and I find that it's right about here. And it went to 439 BCE. So remember, with BCE, we're counting down as we get closer to year 1. And so 439, this is 1,000. So 439 is pretty close to 450. I can round about to 450. So I know it's about halfway, a little less than halfway between 1000 and the year 1. So the directions say to shade in the row. And so this is where colored pencils would be a lot more helpful because it's not really fun to shade with pen, but I'll show you kind of what I'm looking for here. Please do be neat. There are lines there for a reason, so please color inside of them, okay? And shade. Might want to, outline the box and so on. Make it real nice, okay? I would put that away for now, that red, and I would move on to the Age of Exploration, which was brown. So that is, again, the rise is 1400 CE. So now we're in the Common Era. So that would be 1400 CE. It's closer to 1,000 than it is to 2,000, but about halfway. So I'm going to go about right here. And 1800 is not quite 2,000, so right there. A lot smaller. The Age of Exploration was a lot smaller of a time period than Mesopotamia was. which many of you studied Mesopotamia last year in 6th grade, if you are a 7th grader. Greece, 2600 BCE. So again, I go to Greece, to that tier. We call that a tier. I go over. I'm looking for 2600 BC. So I know it's somewhere in between these two. In between 2000 and 3000 exactly is 2500. This is 26, so I need to go a little bit closer. Find that line. So you do have to do a bit of estimating here. So be confident with your estimations. You may want to do some of this in pencil first and then check in with me if you're not feeling super confident. And I can let you know before you color it in. 300 BCE. I know this is year 1. This is about halfway. That would be about 500. So I'm going to come a little closer. And then this one's a bigger time frame. Time span is the word we use to color in. So again, colored pencils, much better here. Thank you for bearing with me with my pens. Okay, so I've done 3 of them with you. You are going to go ahead and complete this for Egypt, the Renaissance, which we will study this year, Rome, which we will study this year, the Middle Ages, which we will study this year, and China, which we will touch on this year. And you want to make sure that that's done very nicely, that you have 8 different colors for your multiple tier timeline. I did plan to use black as one of my colors, so if you want to use pencil or pen for one of your colors, that's fine with me. Once you're finished with this sort of artistic part of the timeline, I do want you to come down here to the bottom and answer these questions using your multiple tier timeline. So I'll do the first one with you. It says, now you've got to do the math. Write how many years are between the following events. So if you need to pause this video and finish this part, I would go ahead and do that. Okay, so we're going to find out how many years pass between 2 events. And I want to remind us that the number of years that pass between 2 events, we call that the span. We talked about that yesterday. The span of time that has passed. So for the first one, it says the rise of Mesopotamia. And it has these parentheses, so it's asking me, when was the rise of Mesopotamia? Go back up here. If you did your timeline well, you should be able to see, oh, that was 3000 BCE. You can confirm that there. So 3000 BCE to the fall of Rome. So the end of Rome, which was 475 CE. And it asks for the answer. So I have to go back to my notes from yesterday and remind myself, how do I find the span? And if you remember, if dates are in the same era, you subtract the numbers. If they are in different or opposite eras, you do the opposite, so you add. Okay? So for example here, we have 3000 BCE and 475 CE. So you ask yourself, is that the same era or is it different eras? It's different. Okay, before common era, it's different than common era. So I'm going to add those 2 numbers together. So I don't mind if you just do your math right here. Some of you might be able to do that mentally in your mind. Awesome. I'm going to write it out for you, demonstrate my amazing math skills. Ms. Martinez knows how to do math. So it's 3,475. And remember from yesterday, what is the unit that we're talking about? It asks how many years are between those two events. So my answer would be 3,475 years. I don't mind if you use the abbreviation. So you are going to continue on for numbers 2 through 7 and finding how many years have passed between two events that it gives you. That's the end of the first page.